and its king decides on a new title for himself because the title of king is not nearly fancy enough. So he pulls back from thousands of years even before him to these demigod rulers. So he takes the title of Huang and the title of Di, both of which are references to these two different gods or demigods, and puts them together into Huang Di, which becomes divine sovereign or divine thearch, or we translate it over to emperor.
Kings are always like that. I can't imagine like getting in a position of leadership and just being and just being like, call me Allah Jesus from now on.
Exactly.
I'm the official Allah Jesus of this tech company or whatever. You know,
I love
it's a wild move, dude. What's up, Airheads? It's time once again. Welcome back to the virtual Airstream studios. We got another stirring rendition of Putting on Airs for you. The Eastern edition this week is we're talking all things China. Well, not all things, just a few particularly wild things about China and Chinese history with the host of the History of China podcast, Chris Stewart, who, as you may have already ascertained from that title I just gave you, is a bit of an expert on China and Chinese stuff. And, you know, I think we all know at this point, pretty fascinating. He tells some pretty wicked and metal-ass stories from Chinese history, and we barely scratched the surface, but it was a good time. But before we get to all that, Joe, how are you doing over there?
Buddy, I'm good. This is my Super Bowl week, baby. It's Masters week, so
That's right.
I'm super pumped. I got up early this morning. I watched the par 3 contest with Bain.
Don't you have a bunch of plans for me and you this Saturday?
Yeah.
Then we got a show that night. I mean, aren't you going to miss a lot of it on Saturday because of all that?
I am, but I'm a professional, so it'll be fine. I'm going to, when me and you are, number one, when we're recording the podcast, I have, you can't see it right now, but I have a TV right here. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So, I'll just have it on. And the thing about golf, other than, you remember when, I did a podcast when Georgia was in the national championship.
I know. This very podcast, in fact.
But the difference is, with that, I literally couldn't have been able to do it because football is way too, this is happening, this is exciting. I can have the Masters on in the background and just check on the score from time to time, and that will be enough to get me through. Saturday's moving day, which is a very important day. For those of you that don't know, you've got the Thursday's the opening round. Then Friday is the day where everybody's vying to make the cut, which means making the weekend. Saturday is called moving day because it's okay, I got to go out here and play my ass off. That way I'm in contention on Sunday. I want to be as far up the leaderboard as I can so that I can make some moves. While moving day is important to me, it's not near as important to me as, A, this podcast, and B, hanging out with my best friend. You know what I mean? So Sunday, it's not fucking up Sunday. Sunday's the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sunday's the day. So I'll be fine. Plus, we're not doing all that stuff till later in the afternoon. I'll be able to, some of these people are teeing off at 7 in the morning, and I've got the ESPN Plus app. So, I'm going to see a lot of golf before you even get to my house.
Okay, well, that's good. I didn't want to run nothing.
No, you wouldn't, buddy. You, listen, me being in your presence.
Well, this is also, this is me sort of being listen, man, if it would help you out for us not to do shit that day.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice I'd be willing to make for you. So you enjoy your Saturday. I will gladly not do shit all day long. Of course, I would love to do a bunch of shit. That's in my nature to do shit all day. But if you want to not.
I know I understand you, but while we're talking this out, I know you're kidding, but in the event that I did say, that would hit, you'd still come here, right? And we'd watch it together. I'm
staying there that night.
Yeah,
so I'm coming there either way.
Well, then we'll just fucking play it by ear.
No. Listen, one of the few things I do actually like to do is do a podcast in person whenever possible. I'm usually the one when me, you, and Drew are anywhere together. Rarely anymore, but still, I'm normally the one who's we're going to do a podcast, right?
No, I want to do it.
It does.
I like this show more than I like golf, and that's saying a hell of a lot. I really like this show a whole lot. I talk about it all the time. All the time.
So China, you sort of, that would be a spoiler if I asked you what you feel like you already know about China, because you cover that with Chris. You tell him exactly.
I did. By the way,
you already know about China, but do you think of China as fancy? you know?
Yeah, I do, but like we get into this in the interview. I think of it as fancy, but but in a magical way. You know what I mean? Sort of like what Chris was saying. He's like, it's always, he's like, part of my job is convincing people that this is a real place that exists and it's not just a bunch of people floating from tree to tree. Like, I do think of it that way. Like I know, like when I'm watching Game of Thrones, I'm like, this is if England had dragons. But whenever I see the same thing done to China, I'm like, this is China. You know what I mean? Like, this is just China. It's just how it be over there. Like, in my mind, they did have dragons, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, hell, maybe they did,
I think,
I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah, sure. Right. There could have been
dude,
dragons.
like the amount of time between the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Stegosaurus is longer than the time between us and the fucking T-Rex. Well, yes. Like
we're closer in time to the T-Rex than the T-Rex was to the Stegosaurus.
What if there's time like we can't? What if there's shit we just don't know? And
that's almost certainly true.
It's almost
right?
certainly. I mean, so what if what if before the Stegosaurus another that amount of time had happened and it was dragons?
It don't even have to be necessarily earlier than the Stegosaurus. It could just be I'm pretty sure the vast majority of things that's ever lived, like we don't know shit about them. You know what I mean? Because apparently, to get fossils, you can tell stuff about. It's like extraordinarily rare circumstances that have to occur. It's just we're dealing with such an insanely long time frame that over a long enough time period, enough animals get caught in enough fucking mudslides or whatever it is exactly that has to happen that later on we got their bones to look at. But most things that's ever lived and died, they just like rot away.
Some of them didn't make it to the ark, And
obviously, yes, the dragons were not on the ark. Hey, how do y'all Christians? What about birds?
Dude,
how do y'all handle birds?
It's so funny that you say all of y'all Christians, like obviously in jest, because I grew up in the church. So I don't know if you know this, but on YouTube, if you go to your page, there's this new little thing that says inspiration. And I was like, I'm going to click that, see what it is. And you click it, and it's like, what it does is based on your channel, it gives you inspiration for videos that you might want to make. And the third one down, mine was, the first one was talk about biscuits, right? Then the second one was, talk about your faith as a Christian man and your love for religion. And the third one was talk about your transition to being a transgender. And I know what has happened here is that I uploaded so many of my Pastor Petey things to YouTube that it doesn't pick up sarcasm. Like it just thinks that I'm a Christian or whatever. But anyways, what was your question? As a Christian,
what do y'all do about birds? You just maybe there were no dragons.
They flew above it. They flew above the water, you dumbass.
Yeah, but like, wouldn't that give them a crazy advantage? Like they wouldn't face any of the consequences of the flood the way everything else did.
Yeah, and that's why they didn't even have to be on there.
I know, but wouldn't that make a difference with them? Like, wouldn't they be, in some sort of better position or something? Like, wouldn't we be ruled by birds now? I guess it was only 6,000 years ago. That's not long enough for the birds to develop. And
this only happened over 40 days.
That also is not true. You know that like sailors often, it depends on the bird, but they see birds and they're like, okay, there might be land nearby because can't
birds
just
have
stay
to land on something.
Yeah, they can't just stay over water. Yeah. So even that is like, so what do they? Did he round up 2 of each bird in like bird cages?
Ostensibly,
he had eagles and turkeys and emus in there and shit.
Yeah, and I guess penguins got to just kick it. Because they can just be in the water.
Right.
But not the whole time, though. They got to come up.
They do got to come up.
But they can, though. You know what I mean?
Well, he probably just had penguins on there, too.
Yeah, I'd say he had penguins
Did he put out is there
a list in the Bible? I don't remember.
Well, I thought they just said it was all of them.
Two of every animal, yeah.
Coming along 2 by 2 and whatever the fuck. But like, I'm saying, did they all come to? Did he like put up a
sign?
apocalypse signal or something, and like penguins waddled up from Antarctica to wherever
Just
the
that
fuck he
boat?
was at over there in where was he at? Like Egypt?
Yeah, I mean,
like
Palestine,
Iraq. Yeah, right. Palestine. Yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah,
somewhere over that way.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the penguins came to Palestine and got on the boat, but only 2 of them. He couldn't just put a signal up. He'd have to send out invitations, or maybe first come first serve. The first 2 penguins that show up get a ticket to the boat, or he makes them fight to the death to earn their place on the boat. I don't know. There's got to be some kind of like.
Did you ever hear DJ's? Did you ever hear DJ's bit about this?
About penguins and how they got on the ark?
No, just about the ark or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember the first part, and I'm going to butcher this, but he was talking about Noah, and he was like, this sumbitch walked in BC Birkenstocks all the way to Antarctica, wrestled not 1 but 2 polar bears, drug their asses all the way back over to the Middle East. Now that right there is a badass sumbitch right there.
Yeah, yes, I do remember that.
By the way, so Mark said there weren't, but so it was all AI that dire wolves are back. That's
no,
not
it ain't
true.
AI.
Dire
It's
wolves
not
aren't
AI.
back.
What they do, it is. I mean,
so they are. It's just Mark's an
I
asshole.
mean, it is disappointing. If I saw that, and it's like hell yeah. But so what it is they use like genetic modification stuff, which we've had around for a little bit now, to modify the genes of the DNA or whatever of gray wolves, and which are extant, right? They exist. We have gray wolves. They modified the genes of gray wolves and said like, well, what we've done is we studied the ancient DNA. We've recovered some fossil records and stuff of dire wolves, and we've modified the gray wolves genetically to where we've turned them into dire wolves, right? But people that know wolf stuff are like, they're like, there ain't no motherfucking way y'all could have done that, because all that Jurassic Park shit ain't really real. All the DNA, we do have DNA from dire wolves, but like not nearly complete enough for y'all to even know what changes to make to a gray wolf to turn it into a dire wolf. So I thought this wolf scientist said like, what they've done is they've taken gray wolf embryos or whatever, and they've modified them slightly to be more like what we think dire wolves were like.
What we saw on Game of Thrones.
I don't even think they're going to be like that big or nothing. But it's like they did that. They took their best guess. It's like, this is probably what dire wolves were,
right? And
they took gray wolf DNA and embryos and stuff and did that to them. And they were like, They also put them in regular dogs, by the way, to be born. Which is wild, but that dog was confused as fuck.
Okay.
But anyway, so like, we've got dire wolves now, but it's like, I mean, it's iffy at best. You can choose to believe it, They're not the same as regular wolves. I mean, that's true. So
that is right, but see, then now we're playing God even more. Like, obviously, we've been playing God in terms of like, making golden doodles and all that type of shit. But I guess the thing with this one is like, the way that you just described that feels closer to Jurassic Park type shit.
Is, yeah.
And like, that's what it is. And like, so like, how long though before they're like, well, fuck it. Let's replicate what we think a T-Rex would have been. And then you got fucking Elon riding one of them motherfuckers into CPAC.
Okay. I would argue that the story as it was presented to the world was Jurassic Park shit, right? And the reality is that it's not as cool, or whatever word you want to use, as what happened in Jurassic Park. So it's like, you just said, how long before they like, let's do a T-Rex? Well, like I said, there's no, like, we have gray wolves, and they were like, this is close to a dire wolf. We don't have that for a T-Rex.
Chickens?
That's what they say is the closest living thing to a T-Rex. But look at a gray wolf versus a dire wolf. Look how much more shit you'd have to do to a chicken. Even approximate a T-Rex. I'm not saying they won't try.
Hold on now. All right. Hear me out. Let's get in the lab. All right. Get you a chicken. Get you a Komodo dragon. Get you an elephant. Get you a rhino. Chop it up. see what happens. You know what I mean?
Just an amorphous blob laid out there.
Just an absolute abomination of gut.
Like,
dude.
Looks like that thing that comes.
A Cronenberg monster. Just
like that thing. Quavo, not Quavo. That's a rapper. Who's the?
That's a rapper.
What's the name of the little dude that comes out of the fucking outside of the victim's torso in Total Recall?
In the
Total
Cronenberg
Recall, the Arnold movie.
Quado? Hold on.
Is that what it is? Or something like that?
Quado. Yeah, hold on.
Anyway, yeah, like some that type shit.
Quaid. No, go Kuato.
Yeah.
Kuato.
The mutant. Yeah. So I said Quado. I mean, hell, that's pretty close.
Yeah, no. I think it's actually pronounced Quado.
Okay.
I think you're right, Quado.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Total Recall, that movie hits. Anyway.
Who does it?
So, yeah, you can, again, they're not gray wolves. They are different. So we can just say they're dire wolves, but they're like designer dire wolves, obviously. They're not
Dior wolves.
Yes, they're not. It's not really. The company that did it claimed we bought actual dire wolves back from extinction, and that is not really technically true. They've played God to bastardize a whole new type of wolf that they say this is basically what dire wolves are. Of course. Like. But, I mean, hell, that's neat too, I reckon. You know what else is neat is this conversation with Chris Stewart, who is a host of the podcast, The History of China, knows about all things China. I will go ahead and tell y'all as we get into this, we had some technical / internet issues. I still thought it was a very engrossing conversation, and we navigated it pretty well. But you are going to run into a little bit of that.
And Burns is going to fix it. I mean,
some of it, I still think people are going to be able to tell. So I'm just acknowledging it up front.
No, I agree. I'm just saying most of the credit will be on Burns, but I still think we handled it.
Credit
well.
or the blame, as the case may be.
The blame or the blame.
Either way,
that's
we'll
true.
see y'all at the other side of this, but enjoy this interview with China know-it-all, Chris Stewart. I mean that in a hidden way. Here he goes. Here's Chris. As a kid, I sure was fat. Hoo-wee, I was. Tell you what, this ain't a therapy session. I got a reason for saying this. As a kid, as a fat kid, one of my absolute favorite things, especially back in the day, sugary cereal, boy. POA it up. Mm-hmm. All the anything fruity, chocolatey, pebbly, circly, donutty, whatever you got, cookie-y. Give it to me. I want it. I'm fat. I want it. And, as an adult, I still think nostalgically back on those breakfast items. But I realize as an adult, I'm a grown up. You can't eat all that sugar for breakfast. You need some protein. You need some good, not all the bad. And those sugary cereals, they just mostly bad. It's fine for kids, but as an adult, you know better. But that's
fine for kids.
Well, it is. I think we all agree.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, all of our kids are fat, but that's fine. Anyway, but you think my cereal eating days are over, at least cereals that hit. But then you find out about Magic Spoon. That's right, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like all your childhood favorites, but without all that dastardly sugar and with some added protein, a ton of it. In fact, if you already are a Magic Spoon fan, I got some other big news for you. Magic Spoon has turned that super popular cereal we just mentioned into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like all those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are so delicious and have already become a go-to for me. Before working out, before you hit the gym or the garage, in my case, you want to have a little bit of energy but not be sluggish. It's hard to strike that balance sometimes with Magic Spoon's new treats. Get the job done in delicious fashion. Joe, tell them more about it.
Oh, my God, dude. With the cereal, every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein and 0 grams of sugar. 4 grams of net carbs, so you can feel good about what you're eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, and there's so many more. Treats? Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavor like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. By the way, I don't know if, I told Trae on the show, you can tell my chest, I'm getting a little pump, getting my pump back. I'm actually about to run down, have me a chocolatey peanut butter treat, and then go hit my Bowflex. And it's made it so much easier. It's delicious. And it's like, I feel like I'm cheating but I'm not. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/POA or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/POA for $5 off. Magic Spoon. Hold on to the dream.
Hey.
Hold it.
Hold it tight now.
Tight. All right, man. So, look, me and Trae, obviously we're both beautiful. We're both handsome men. That's why we're in Hollywood. But, you know, everyone is shaped a little bit different, and t-shirt companies don't like really take that into consideration. And when me and Trae wear most stuff, like Trae looks super boxy and stupid and things drape off of him, and he sort of looks like a mannequin, but like one that like ain't been fed enough. You know what I mean? He just don't hit. You know what I'm saying? And me, for instance, the shirts that they normally make, I actually look really good in the chest and all that stuff, but then my belly be hanging out the bottom and stuff like that. But there has been a solution, and it's True Classic, because they got one mission, and that's to make sure that guys look good and feel even better. And brother, let me tell you something. They have nailed it. The fit, the feel, and the price. You can change your entire wardrobe and the entire way you look, because it's not just tees. They got hoodies. They got jeans. And by the way, the jeans that they got, bruh, I can sleep in them. They are amazing. Now that I had a pair of my go-to jeans, and I ain't thrown them away because rednecks don't really throw stuff away. But I've pretty much exclusively worn only my True Classic jeans ever since I got them. Their brand its DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do, from their creating high quality essentials to making folks laugh with their hilarious ads. You know, sort of like the ones that we're doing right now, but they actually make even funnier ones. They also deliver Ritz-Carlton level customer service, by the way, giving back to the communities they believe in. Everything they do is done with a purpose. And I've been wearing True Classic stuff for a while now, like actually even before we got into being sponsored by them. I love them. They make me look good. They don't bunch up. There's no awkward tight spots, just an effortless fit that works. Trae, tell everybody how they can get a good deal.
Yeah, I'll just add on this, that the jeans do hit, the shirts hit too. It's like Joe said, they're snug where you want them to be and loose where you want them to be. It's like the parts you want to look good do look good, and the parts that look like garbage, they're hidden creatively with the effortless tailormanship. They tailor them very well, their shirts. I don't know the word for that, but they do a good job of it over there at True Classic. So it's time for you to forget overpriced designer nonsense and skip all the cheap throwaways too. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. So grab yours at Target or Costco, or we'd prefer head to trueclassic.com/POA. That's trueclassic.com/POA to get the hookup today. Chris Stewart is with us, everybody. I was going to say Chinese historian, China historian. What's the right way to put, because you're not Chinese, but you are a historian of China.
I'm glad you
noticed.
This
is a great start for me. Yeah. But anyway, how do I say that right, Chris?
I am a podcaster on Chinese history.
There you go. Podcaster on Chinese history. That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Well,
the History of China podcast. Very in-depth, scholarly, academic, like exhaustively researched. A hell of an undertaking. We said on here, every now and then China or Chinese history will come up in some, vague way. And I'll be like, I want to learn more about Chinese history, but it's very daunting because I'm a Western pig. And, in the West, we don't know.
I love it.
We don't know anything about the East, really, generally speaking. And they've got it's when you start looking at their history, it's obviously expansive. There's a lot there, and it goes back a long way. And so, what made you go down that path to begin with?
Well, you're absolutely right on all accounts. When it comes to the amount and the sheer depth of it, it's a lot to get into. I got into it with the same sort of hubristic Western confidence that I think a lot of us do anything with, which is just, how hard could it be?
Right.
I was listening to some podcasts on my commute to work when I was in Shanghai, and thought, that sounds like something that would be interesting. I didn't see anything that was in the market at the time. I didn't look that hard, granted. I didn't know to. But I thought, I could do something that'll just I'll be able to knock it out in maybe 10 or 20 episodes, and that'll be fine. Yeah. And here I am about 14 years later and about 300 episodes later, still very much in the middle of it all.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I listened to your first episode, and it was. I even texted Trae because in your first episode you said something. I'm paraphrasing, but like it feels like an act of insanity to try and learn about something that's 5,000 years long, you know. And I texted that to Trae, and I was like, "That is literally what we tell everyone when they're like, why don't you do China? Why don't you do, you know, whatever?" And it's like, where do you begin? Like, we're going to get here, and then you pull this string. And also, I'll be honest, I assumed you were going to be Chinese. Totally did, you know, which is good because some of my jokes are going to play better later because they won't offend you.
Oh, good.
Well, on that note, though, I mean, it's sort of a touchy thing, but I did at some point want to ask, and Corey has brought it up now. Like you said, you've been doing it for 12, 13 years or whatever. I think you started back in 2013. And it's like, I feel like in 2013 it had not yet started culturally, this thing where like, do you ever get flack from people now for being like a white guy doing the History of China podcast? Because it's like I could see a certain faction of liberaldom in particular who would be like, where do you get off? You know, that type of thing. But you started at a time before anyone ever really did that, I feel like, but then that's happened since then. So does that ever come up for you?
I've kind of been sort of podcast grandfathered into being sort of like older than most of that, but I do get it, especially when it comes out from time to time, like it's some vast secret that I've been keeping this entire time. You know, Chris Stewart is a really Chinese sounding name,
right?
But it does come out, oh, you know, he's a white guy, right? It's like, I've been very clear about that, and I try to get through it and over it when it comes up. I just think, you know, the sources that I draw from, the information that I'm presenting is very well backed up, very well sourced. And that's, so that kind of obviates any criticism.
My counter argument to it would be like, I did a piece on Martin Luther King Jr. because last week was like the anniversary of his assassination. I did a piece on him, and I had, and mostly was met with positive reviews or whatever, but I have had people be like, you know, where do you get off telling this story, you know, as a white guy or whatever? And I'm always like, here's my thing. Whenever white people never talk about anything but white stuff, we also get flack for not acknowledging the other things that exist. And I would rather err in that space. You know what I mean? Because like, it would be worse if you, Chris Stewart, was just like, I don't give a fuck about China. You know what I mean? That would be like way worse.
I 100% agree. I think, you know, information and history and culture is meant to be shared and appreciated by people who aren't a part of it. And if you only look at your own culture, it's navel gazing. It's incestuous. You're not going to learn anything new. So I think it's real important. But
it's also like what Mark Twain said, that the enemy of bigotry is travel. And I've always thought that like a modern day interpretation is like, look, everyone can't travel because it costs a lot of money, but you can read about other places and it's the same thing. So I think what you're doing is great, is all I'll say. Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Not at all. No, all I was going to say is just, well, I forgot. So I guess we can just, it wasn't that important.
Well, that's all right. I wanted to know, before you started, you said, for a little more background, you said you were living and working in China. So I wonder if that was like the origin of your just general interest in it. But also when you started the podcast, like, I know you said you were naive about the undertaking it would be, but like, did you have any kind of foundation of knowledge about China, or were you just like had the idea to learn it all and take people with you on that journey and started from like nothing, you know?
Fortunately, I didn't start from nothing. I did my undergraduate in history, and I focused on contemporary Chinese history, like the 20th century, and Neo-Confucianism, which is older than that, even though it has Neo in the name. I learned Mandarin as my minor in college, and then I went to China and worked there, first at briefly at a university, then for little kids, and then I got up to high school doing world and U.S. history. So from an educational and pedagogical background, I've got a background there, and then from the content standard, I've got some background there too.
Works for me.
What made, but to begin with, when you were in college, like what
drew
what was
you
the
to the
spark
sword?
of your interest in China? Period.
It's
Crab Rangoons.
weird.
That was it for me.
That was me.
Yeah, hell
Karate
yeah.
movies, Crab Rangoons. Yeah, no, what was it?
I was tired of taking French language in high school, and so I went to Oregon to go to college there, and they offered Japanese and Chinese language courses there. And I thought, well, I'll choose something interesting, and it was kind of a coin flip, and I chose Chinese, and from there it just kind of went that direction, and I got interested in the culture, and in terms of my history studies, that's where it focused in on as well.
What? Go ahead, Corey.
No, you go ahead, please, for the love of God.
I've found, or I've gotten the impression that, like I said, a lot of Western people don't know shit about Eastern history. And there's it seems like anytime there's a story about, I don't know, just about anything culturally significant you can come up with, it feels like if you know the Western version of it, it's like, oh, but that happened in China 1,000 years before that or whatever. Or it's like everything had already happened in China, but we just don't even know about any of that. Like, is that sort of true? Like, you know what I mean? A huge portion of my job overall, communicating to the Western audience or any non-Chinese audience about it, is convincing people that China is a real place that exists and is full of people who have lives and isn't just some magical made up fairy tale land. Right.
It does seem that way in the movies that I've watched.
Mm-hmm.
It's when they fly on the trees and jump over with the swords, right?
And I find that to be, in a word, neat. I enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are fantastic, and those are some of the the Robin Hood kind of stories that come out of what's called wuxia, or swords and sorcery stories. They're fantastic.
Yeah, so here's what I know about China, and I'm going to need you to fill in the gaps on literally all of the rest. I made a list here. Things I know about China. Great noodles. Big ass wall.
Oh, yeah.
Rats.
The biggest.
Rats have their own year. That's kind of cool. Jackie Chan. And so, anyways,
Jackie Chan.
If you could just fill us in on the rest, that'd be good.
All the other 5,000 history or year history of it, besides what Corey just said about it. Also, they said rats have their own year. Is it the year of the snake now, or is that, or did that?
I believe it is. You know, let me just.
You don't know off the top of your head what goddamn year it is? Boom, gotcha, bitch. That's what we did. That's why we had you on the podcast.
I think it's
out you
horse.
You know what's funny
first
about
question.
that?
I'm just absolutely stumped.
Well, what's funny about that is I just remembered why I thought that is I saw someone.
Snake.
Oh, it is Snake. Oh, okay. Maybe that isn't what it was.
Yes.
Then.
Maybe we should do his podcast.
I saw someone post a picture of an old Houston Oilers hat that had a snake winding its way through the oil derrick on it. And,
That's fire.
And the people posted it are like, what the fuck is the snake about? And some people in the comments are like, maybe it's because it's the year of the snake. I was like, oh, yeah. So this is for the Chinese market of Tennessee Titans / Houston Oilers fans.
All two of them.
Yeah, right. And then in China,
the two dumbest people in China.
Right. I was like, it's the worst team they could choose. But it's like, I don't think that's it. But that person saying maybe it's because it's the year of the snake right now is literally the only reason that I was even possibly aware of that. But
yeah,
anyway.
Year of the Snake, 2 years after Year of the Dragon, it's just the worst dragon. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What decides what year it is? Like does it completely rotate? Like after this, it's always this, or is it sort of like how a farmer's almanac works, where it's like, well, this happened in July, so this is going to happen in September, and you know what I know that doesn't seem to make sense, but do you get where I'm going with that?
Oh yeah, I do. It's a cycle of 12 and a cycle of 5 elements. So 12 animals, 5 elements. And so it's a 60-year rotation.
Okay.
So each animal gets paired with an element for any given year, or I'm not following what you said. There's 5 elements and 12 animals, but
if you've ever seen
fire, right?
If you ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's like those elements. So it's like air, fire, water, metal, and wood. Earth, and depending on that, either wood or metal.
Oh, Snake might be metal though. I can't decide if Snake is fire or metal.
But it changes. So every animal at some point gets to be every element.
Nah, Snake ain't never would. I disagree with you there. Snake is never would.
Well, you disagree with all of China. You don't disagree with Chris.
Yeah, dude.
You disagree with the entirety of Chinese culture.
And who he represents.
Is who you disagree with.
This white man represents.
Yes,
all
he is
of
their
China.
official envoy here today.
Yeah.
Officially, yes. We come in commerce.
I told you, one of the things I want to, just because, again, what are we going to do? We're not going to cover all of Chinese history sitting here, so it's more broader questions. I already told you in the emails we shared about you coming on here.
We got like 20 minutes. I can get through it all.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Well, you can speed run it if you want to, but this show's about, fancy shit. So usually when it comes to history, in terms of fanciness, we talk about emperors and courts and things of that nature. And so I told you, I know, because I know there's a bunch of them. The most, sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, Game of Thronesy type stories from Chinese history. Because a lot of people know Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin, he really pulled a lot of that shit from actual, European and UK history, the War of the Roses and that type of thing. So the equivalent of that, but from Chinese history, just a few anecdotes or whatever that are particularly wild or dramatic or theatrical or, whatever, dealer's choice. But we could start there.
Absolutely. And I came up with a few ideas to start us off with, but there's a lot of choice. So I figured, starting towards the beginning is a pretty good place to start. So why not start with the first emperor, the guy who kind of set off the whole thing? If that sounds good to you guys.
Sounds great. Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. It's your show from this point on. Go ahead.
Wonderful. All right. So I'm talking about the first emperor of China, also known as Qin Shi Huang. And he comes right at the end of what China occasionally goes through, which is a titanic, earth-shattering civil war that lasts for several hundred years.
Sure.
Known very conveniently as the Warring States period. And at the end of this small emergent state to the far west of China arises, develops, and becomes militarily very powerful. It's called Qin. It conquers all of its foes one by one using amazing strategy and also great economic reforms and systems. And its king crowns himself as the new ruler of this newly reunified empire and decides on a new title for himself because the title of king is not nearly fancy enough.
Sure.
So he pulls back from thousands of years even before him to these demigod rulers that once
that's crazy. That's so crazy to me that ancient China is we ain't old enough. We got to draw from thousands of years ago.
We have to go back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he takes the title of Huang and the title of Di, both of which are references to these two different gods or demigods, and puts them together into Huang Di, which becomes divine sovereign or divine thearch, or we translate it over to emperor.
Okay,
and he's
nice humble guy, possessed of humility. This guy, these kings are always like that. It's fun. I can't imagine getting in a position of leadership and just being and just being call me Allah Jesus from now on.
Exactly.
I'm the official Allah Jesus of this tech company or whatever.
I love
it's a wild move, dude.
I love the phrase he was a benevolent king. I'm no, he weren't. He was still a king. He could still have you murdered if you didn't give him enough pence,
Okay, so that's where emperor comes from. So that's fun. So anyway, keep going. Then what'd he do?
So he decides that he's going to change the entire economic and weights and measures system. So he makes everybody build all new roads, which are perfectly straight. He changes all the coins in the weight system. Pretty close. And he starts to build what he's going to be spending the rest of eternity in, which is his tomb. So he builds a giant mountain out of earth and then builds a city underneath the mountain about 40 meters below the surface of the earth, fully decked out miniature of the capital city.
That is crazy.
I know, dude.
How did everybody always talks about the pyramids and shit? And look, maybe the pyramids are even crazier than that, but blowing out an underground layer in a mountain all that long. Is this different from where the terracotta army is, or
it's adjacent? It's right by it. It's right by those terracotta soldiers.
That's so
they
nuts,
just did this
man.
in that show. They literally just did this in that show Paradise, and it's set in modern times, and all the scientists are like, we can't fucking do this shit.
We couldn't do that. Yeah.
What are you talking about? And apparently, a la Jesus dude was like, we sure can.
Mm-hmm.
The key is massive amounts of totally forced slave labor.
Slavery.
It really
it's
makes
always
things
slavery.
possible.
That's always the answer. Yes. Right.
Well,
yeah.
dude.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to tell you
didn't
even have to mention that. Everybody assumes.
Of course. It's a given, right?
Yes.
So, and this is where the first Great Wall of China that you so conveniently brought up comes from as well. It's actually a linking together of former kingdom or state walls to try to keep out the foreigners to the north, which it doesn't work. Surprise.
Right.
So the
one
Great
and
Wall
only
of China
time
that
that
we
walls didn't
know
work.
was actually started then. Like its origins come from literally the start of this emperor.
The wall that you know that you've seen in pictures and paintings is actually the third or fourth rebuild of that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's
Nice.
that's the initial long wall.
Right on.
And then he decides, after he's pretty well into his massive mausoleum construction with tens of thousands of people working on that at all times, he decides that actually he doesn't want to die at all. So he's going to find a way to live forever.
Heard that.
He doesn't do this in a small way. Instead, he starts casting about for people who can sell him ways to live forever. And some people get him to design and have constructed a giant fleet filled with about 5,000 people that's going to go sail across the sea, find the island where the immortals live, bring some of them back, and so that they can teach this king how to live forever. They disappear.
Samoans they're looking for?
Supposedly they became Japan.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, how about that?
Makes sense.
Because they
It
never
makes
came
way
back.
more sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long
And
trip
then-
back then. You
Yeah,
know what
that
I
happened a
mean?
lot back then. A lot
It
of
is.
never coming back happened, but
Dude,
yeah.
I've thought about that a long time where, like, somebody, let's say hypothetically, like, you got a buddy, like, you live in America, and it's like, 1700, whatever, and he's like, I've decided I'm going to sail to China and just live. It's like, you may as well have a funeral for that dude. Like, you're never going to see him again.
Bro,
You know
China.
what I mean?
If he's like, I'm going to Missouri, like in a
Yeah,
wagon
yeah.
train,
Yeah,
you ain't never gonna see that motherfucker
Ever
again.
again.
Yeah, right. So anyway,
That's one of the things I really like about American history was, for the most part of it, if you really fucked up your life, or screwed it up rather.
No, you can you can curse.
Thank you. You could just hop onto a wagon or a train and just disappear and start again. For most of
And
it.
it always worked out.
always never got eaten by your fellow travelers or died of dysentery or none of that shit.
Or got exploded with fellow Chinese people in a cave in San Francisco.
Got scalped or nothing. Nothing bad ever happened to those people.
All
But
just
yeah, it was good to
sunshine
have
and
it.
rainbows.
Yeah, as an option. Okay, so he's looking for immortality. One of the things he did, he got a fleet of 5,000. Like you said, no small. This dude does everything big. Corey's right. This is the first Texan. That's who this guy was. He does everything. But fleet, 5,000 people looking for the island of immortals, which we now think became Japan, which is super cool. And then what else do you do?
So when he figures out that they don't come back, he gets real sad and he starts looking for another option. And he finds sort of the RFK Jr. of his day, which is Taoist alchemists, who tell him that the true secret is you've got to make yourself physically like eternal elements in nature. So like gold and silver, they don't rust, they don't decay. So you got to make yourself like them. And they just so happen to have this tincture made out of quicksilver, mercury, that, you know, he can take in a regimented fashion that will render him into this immortal sort of being beyond death. Turns out, it just kills you.
Yeah, it just makes you turn blue and die. That's all. Well, that's all mercury does. But yeah, what's so funny about these types of ancient medicine things I think about all the time is like this is happening thousands of years ago at the beginning of Imperial China or whatever, and yet people all around the world were drinking mercury and shit for like so much. I feel like we only really stopped like
1972.
Exactly. Yeah. Like fucking the last 100 years or something. It's like everyone who ever took it turned blue and died. And yet people kept just drinking it medicinally or whatever. It's like, it really took us a long time to hammer out that whole medicine thing.
Yeah. I get to wonder there's people, you know?
Yeah. Well, we've had a whole bunch of them. That's how we've done
That's
that.
true.
You know. Most of them almost all of them have died at this point. But, yeah.
That's true.
Okay. So that killed him. So he had 2 shots at it. One of them, he made Japan. That's a pretty good spinoff. But then the other one, he drank mercury and died. And that's how it ended for him.
So if he had done them if he'd have tried the other one first, no Japan,
somebody would have made Japan eventually.
Yeah, Japan was pretty inevitable.
Yeah.
Would have been Korean, maybe.
Yes.
So he dies. He has to be secreted back. His body has to be secreted back to the capital because they're afraid that if the people learn that he's dead before he's, entombed, then they'll get angry because he's been making a lot of these people angry with the wall building and the tomb building and all that stuff that he wasn't paying anybody for.
Huh. That's weird. We got a guy like that.
Yeah. Funny. They do tend to get angry when you don't pay them. So afterwards, his son becomes the second emperor, but it's the wrong son. The son that was supposed to inherit the throne is assassinated because some of the people didn't want this guy, so he's knifed off screen. And this other son, named
I was going to say, like,
I
wanted to ask earlier, and just a small quick aside, like, obviously I assume in these 100 Years Wars, it's a bunch of swords and stuff like that. But when you said assassinated, like, had they gotten to the whimsical blow darts yet?
Did they? Is that a Chinese thing? I don't even know.
To me, yeah. To me, that's China.
In the tomb of the first emperor, there's supposed to be mechanical crossbow booby traps that are poison tipped. We don't know if they're actually there, but it's written about.
Boom.
We don't.
Okay, well, that's not a blow dart.
To try to find out,
Chris.
It's true.
Isn't blow dart?
I had to bend it.
Like, I mean, I think of like jungle peoples. I don't know how else to put it. Like tribes and you know what I mean. Like, yeah. I remember Jamie Foxx had a bit about being blow darted in Africa.
The blowgun appears to have been invented in Southeast Asia.
Okay, all right, there you go.
I was going to say in ancient times.
All right,
because they had the bamboo. I was going to say that they had the bamboo.
Oh yeah, bamboo. That does make sense.
So, if I may, suck my dick.
Okay, good job.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That does sound like something that the armies that the Chinese were fighting in the South would have been fighting against, is the poison tip blow darts.
For the record, Southeast Asia is very jungly. Am I wrong?
That's true. We can both be right.
Vietnam,
I'm fine with us.
I'm saying the southeastern part. There's a lot of jungle there, and I said jungle peoples. That's what I said. So okay, all right.
I just said I think of Asia.
I think you can both be right.
All I said.
Okay, Chris is right. We're both right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, great conciliator.
Keep going.
So his son takes over, and his son's a moron, as sons
always
sometimes are.
Classic tale. That tale as old as time, quite literally.
And even worse, the advisor, this evil eunuch named Zhao Gao,
I'd be evil too, by the way. You cut my dick off.
Oh gosh, yeah. What's left to live for other than just revenge?
Chicken wings.
I guess there's also that.
Yeah.
So he decides that he's going to take full power and just use this little dumb guy as his puppet. But he's got to get enough power and control. So what he does, he plays kind of a rather famous trick, where he has the emperor convene as grand court and council, and all the advisors come in and they assemble. And Zhao Gao says, "Well, I've got a gift for you, Your Majesty, and here it is. It is a perfect, fine, beautiful horse." And horses back in the day were better than gold. So China
the Trojan horse was
no. Go ahead.
So in walks this animal handler with an animal behind him, but it's clearly not a horse at all. It's in fact a deer with antlers and spots, and it's a deer. And the emperor says, "What's this? What's kind of, are you tricking me? What is this, a joke? I can see you telling me this is a horse. It's not." And Zhao Gao says, "Well, no, Your Majesty, I've seen a lot of horses in my day, and this is a great horse. But I'm no expert. Let's ask the assembled officials here. What do you guys think? Is this a horse or is this a deer? And they hold a little vote, and some of them vote, yeah, it's a deer. Some of them say, no, it's a horse. Some of them are smart enough to not say anything at all. And Zhao Gao just says, okay. And he jots down who votes for who. And then he has the ones who said, no, that's really a deer. He has them murdered in their sleep.
Okay. They then reconvene.
Yeah. All right.
They reconvene and hold a second vote.
Oh, yeah. Wonder how that went.
At which point they figured out which way the wind was blowing, and that Zhao Gao was the one actually in charge. The good news is, the news at least, is that very quickly thereafter, the people get very tired of what's been going on, the chaos that's been unfurled upon them, the constant wars and fighting and the massive tax increases. They start a huge rebellion, overthrow the entire dynasty. And so this very first and some would still say even most important of the dynasties of China lasts a grand total of about 10 years before it collapses.
Wow.
Mismanaged.
It's funny that people, like, all the people are like, I'm sick and tired of all this war and violence and deaths. And it's like, you know what that means? Time to start a goddamn rebellion and fucking which, I mean, that's all you can do. I certainly get that. There's no other option, but it's still just kind of funny. It's also that Zhao Gao guy. That horse deer story, the whole time I was like, what master stroke has this man cooked this fucking little finger, this Chinese little finger cooked up here? And then it's just like, I'm just going to fucking kill everybody that disagrees with me in their sleep until people learn to not disagree with me no more. And it's like, I mean, you know, if it ain't broke,
you're right.
Yeah, right. Can't argue with the results. But
you're subtle until you don't have to be anymore.
Yes.
And then you just move.
I'm going to ask you about a specific...
What do the tech people like to say? Move fast and
exactly. I'm going to ask you about a specific person. You know about... first of all, a quick divergence, because I'm going to say this earlier. Tell me if you think there's anything to this. Just with how Western-centric Western people tend to be, I think one of the issues with like Chinese history and Western people and us not knowing shit about... First of all, we're not ever taught, but I think another element of it is it's like, it's kind of inherently hard for a lot of honkies like us to follow because of like just the way naming conventions and stuff work over there. Like it's hard, you know, a lot of the names, I don't even know how to pronounce them right. And then if you I trust do pronounce them right, but you say the name, but then I could read it and not even recognize that as the same name you were saying because we're all just so dumb about, you know, China talk. Exactly. Yes. So it's like, you think that's a big part of it, or that's just me being stupid?
It is a big part of it. Chinese language is particularly difficult because it uses tones, which are really hard for non-tonal speakers to deal with or grasp. And that's just literally the way the word moves and sound as you say it. So there's that. But then there's a lot of things sound alike. Chinese is a very homophone-rich language. So there's a lot of words that overlap with each other. And then it is just a very alien and exotic way to be speaking for an English speaker because it's just going from this very different basis point of where it developed linguistically.
Yeah, we've talked about that on here before. Like Trae made the good point of like, you know, I can go to a Mexican restaurant and order a Mexican dish that and say it in the Spanish way that it's written and not sound racist. But in order to speak Mandarin, you've got to make those tones. Like you've got to sound Chinese to do it because it doesn't make sense otherwise. So like that's why me and him have always been like, well, I'm definitely not going to try to say some Mandarin words because I'm just going to look like I'm doing a very bad Chinese accent. But like, you have to do it.
Or you're gonna butcher the shit out of it and know that you're doing it. So you're either gonna like sound stupid because you know you're saying it wrong, or you're gonna be worried if you're not like an expert, if you're not fluent like our boy here, you're gonna feel like you sound like you're doing a bad Chinese impression or something. I saw this story get posted on Reddit the other day from Chinese history, and I knew you were coming on. I was like, well, I'm definitely going to ask him about that because it's definitely pretty Game of Thrones, in my opinion. And again, I'm going to butcher all these names, but Lu Zi, Luzhi, an empress or the wife of an emperor, an empress dowager, Lu Zi from
Luja.
I've got the book on her.
Oh, what did you say? Lu Jie? Is that how it's said?
Luja, yeah.
Okay, the story in particular is one where you're talking about wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Or you're talking about wrong sons or whatever. The story where her husband, her like dead husband, he had all these consorts and a harem and concubines, and most of them she was okay with. But one concubine in particular, concubine QI, who she resented because their sons didn't get there was like a dispute between her sons. So the Empress Lu had the concubine had her hands and feet chopped off, her eyes gouged out, her ears burned off, her nose cut off, her tongue cut out, forced her to drink a potion that made her unable to speak anymore, and threw her into a turlet while calling her a human swine. So
she ended up okay?
Yeah, yeah. So
walk it off. Walk it off.
Well, roll it
Can't
off.
she play, goddammit?
Yeah, can't she play? Anyway, so that's pretty hardcore. So I was just wondering if you if that's a story that stuck out to you, if you're familiar with it already, if you had some other context or thoughts on it or anything, because that's some wild shit right there.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, Empress Lu is very infamous across Chinese history, and in the way that most famous women in China are famous, which is as the cackling evil bad guy.
We got that too.
And you spelled you spelled out basically what she's the most infamous for, which is turning her the target of her jealous rage into her personal pincushion, which is, I mean, it's brutality almost beyond reckoning.
Yeah.
So how
go ahead
seriously do we take that? It kind of depends on, do you want just, a great story, or, how much can a human body actually endure before it just gives up?
We want the great story. You know what I mean?
Might be a little bit beyond the pale there. So Empress Lu, she was in the dynasty that came after the Qin dynasty, which is the Han dynasty.
So 4 million years later.
And she's actually, in this case, actually not that long. There's just one, minor little cataclysmic civil war in between. And then within about a decade, the Han dynasty comes out of the result of that. And she's the wife of the emperor, obviously.
Okay, I was about to
but as the emperor dies,
like over here, like in England, for instance, like, you had Queen Elizabeth, but her husband was not called the king. You know what I mean? Like, she was the queen. She's the one that held the power. And over there, it's like there's an emperor, and then is his wife just naturally called empress, or were they super, I guess our term for it would be woke, and they actually let the woman have power, and she was just the straight empress.
And the ironic thing is that, all these negative personality traits and cunning and manipulativeness and wanting to have personal power that but the historians have long said is terrible when a woman has this. Well, those are the exact same things that they praise if it's a man. So it seems to be just whether or not there's a willy between the legs that determines whether it's good or bad. Yeah,
there's a whole thing with I've read before that there's obviously all these cultures that developed independently around the globe over human history, right? They're very different. There's so many striking differences between many of them in many ways, but one of, if not the only thing that's essentially universal is that women are not allowed to hit in these places. That the patriarchy, basically, that all of any culture in any part of humanity that evolved or developed, almost all of them subjugated women, even if they had nothing else in common. So it's like, men knew what we were about from the jump, I guess.
You got to maintain job security.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. It also makes you think like, well, guess that's how it ought to be. If we all came to that same conclusion,
Look,
you know.
I think what it is like this. It's funny because the book I was reading this in a book, and it's like it's by a smart person who's saying it's like, and no one can agree on why this is.
Was it Sapiens?
Yes, it was Sapiens.
Yeah, I remember this part.
To me, I was like, well, I mean,
we're stronger.
Exactly. It's like it's just a physical reality that they can't help. We are literally stronger than them, and every man in every culture that was true. So. I mean, what more do you really need to know?
That's it.
Like, they didn't have any other real choice. But I don't mean the men didn't. I mean, like, when things were much more brutal, there just really wasn't shit women could do about it. And guys have always been kind of bloodlusty or whatever, and, you know, power hungry and all that stuff. So it's just like, to me, it makes all the sense. It's fucked up, but it makes all the sense in the world. I don't find it like confusing or even particularly fascinating at all. To me, it's like, well, yeah, obviously that's how it went.
Right.
But what do I know?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there as to why. So, yeah, men can usually just physically dominate the women that are near to them. And so we've all been kind of riding that coattail ever since. But it is funny that in Chinese history, especially, we kind of almost see an inversion of that a lot of the time, where
because Chinese men and women
after the warring states, and
I knew we were going to get here.
You called it. After the warring states, though, you get this weird inversion of who's in power. Where if you look in like Europe or the Islamic world later on, you know, it's typically the warrior classes that are in power. The king becomes king because he's the best warrior, typically, and then the lords and nobles and knights are there because they're good at killing people, at least initially. But what you get in China very early on, and it lasts through today, really, if you go into a military job, you're kind of seen as not as good, not as awesome. Military is for, you know, losers who can't
poor people
pass their exams.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because we did go through like a little bit of that.
For a long period of time. It's for foreigners and criminals.
Right. I was about to say, because like in America, we went through that a little bit, like, and it was kind of sparse, but it's like George Washington was the first president because he was a badass on the battlefield. And then that wasn't always the case, but it's like, it was definitely the case for like Ulysses S. Grant. And then it was the case for Eisenhower. And it was the case for, and a lot of people I know, like literally there's so many people I know that they wanted to hide their racism by saying like, they're like, no, I have no problem with Barack Obama being black. I just think that in order to be president, you should have served in the military, right? Like, I think you should have some sort of military background. And you saying like back then, the biggest warrior would become, you know, the ruler. It's like, I'm not saying that's great, but elections haven't been going so awesome either. So maybe we should just go back to that and just let the most badass Mel Gibson and Braveheart sumbitch settle it out, you know?
Well, it's also funny that, like, not to get super into politics, but it's funny that seems to be another page that I guess Donald Trump has taken out of China's playbook. And that, like, he's like, you know, soldiers are all fucking idiot losers, right? They suck. And everybody's like, we were supposed to support the troops. He's like, they're dumbasses. Fuck them.
They wanted a Camaro. Come on.
Right. So anyway, I guess he's just.
He likes guys that don't get captured. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, that's wild though. So listen, Chris, let's say I'll say this. So obviously, you know, we've had a couple technical difficulties here, and out of all of the 5,000 years, we've gotten like 2 good stories so far, but they have hit for me. I wanted to say, you know, throw it to you one more time and say if there's one more like particularly wild story that you think would be good that you want to tell us, then please go ahead and do it, and then we can go ahead and let you go, and then we'll definitely bring you back again.
Yeah, I want to do a part 2.
We could do multiple parts if you're up for it, because I mean, I know we ain't even scratching
absolutely
the surface here, but anyway, so yeah, if you got another one for us, hit us with it, because they've all hit for me so far.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, let me flash forward in time for you then. And again, sorry about the tech difficulties.
Not your fault
on my end, but I'd be happy.
Not your fault. In fact, we're glad that they happened, because Burns our editor, he doesn't do enough. And we need him to earn the money that we so generously give him. He's overpaid and, well, of course, underappreciated, but that's like rightfully so. So Burns,
underproductive.
He's absolute just dog shit,
borderline worthless
asshole.
Sure.
So have fun with this one, Burns.
Pompous. Anyway, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Burns, I'm sure you're doing a great job. Keep it up. So to flash forward in time, we're going to go more than 1,000 years in the future from where we just were. We're going to go to the 1300s and the collapse of the Mongol Yuan dynasty and the rise of the Ming dynasty after that, where the Chinese take back control of China from the Mongols. Excuse me. Very nice. Well done. So we actually go to, after the death of the guy who took it back, the Hongwu Emperor, we get to his succession. And we get one of his sons, who's the Prince of Beijing. Beijing's not the capital at this point. So he's just up there in the north by himself. And his name is Judy. Judy. Okay. And so
that's Prince where the Judy chop comes from. I knew it.
I like it.
Hey, it was stupid, but I like it. I'm for it.
Yeah. His brother Ninji. And
he decides that he's tired of people making fun of his name. In spite of his name, he is a hugely militaristic warlord, and he thinks that his dad picked the wrong successor because his dad picked his nephew, who is this bookish, educated, poetry writing,
queer.
Yeah.
Or however you say it in China.
And so Judy, the Prince of Yan, decides that he's going to wage war on his own nephew, marches down to the south capital, Nanjing, burns the capital down with his nephew inside of it. And then says, "Oh, what happened? I don't even know what happened. My nephew was maybe what was in there. I don't know. What a tragedy. But anyway, it looks like I'm here, and I guess I'm the only one alive, so I'm in charge now, right?" And everybody says, "Yeah, you just conquered the entire country with your army, so you are in charge. Yes, sir."
That's how China be, baby.
And so he decides that he's going to call himself Yongle, which means eternal happiness. The Emperor of Eternal Happiness. Isn't that nice? And as a first act in his new and exciting reign era, he decides he wants to have the baddest speaker in the entire country come and basically give his opening ceremony address. And this guy is this poet scholar named Fang Xiaoru. He's been living out in the mountains and hills for a long time because he just didn't want to be a part of all this nonsense. So he seeks him out, says, "Fang, you got to come. You got to be my guy. You got to give a speech, write me a poem, tell everybody how awesome I am because I'm Chinese. I'm not Mongol. So you're cool with me, right?" And Fang Xiaoru is well respected because he's this Confucian scholar. And what Confucians like more than anything is people who don't lie and people who tell the truth and people who stand against, power bravely, even if it puts them at personal risk. And so Fang says, "No, and also leave me alone and lose my number." And the new emperor persists and says, "No, you got to come." And he says, "No, I will never do it. And here's why, because I think you suck and I hate you." So he's then brought to the capital to explain himself. And the emperor tries to convince Fang to basically take the deal. Got to take the art of the deal. Look, I've got all the power. I'm being just like this ancient figure who's protecting the realm from chaos. So won't you be my guy? And he says, "Well, if you're this ancient figure, then where's your nephew? If you're protecting the line of kings, then where's your nephew?" The implication being, I know you killed him. Everybody knows you killed him, and you've taken over. You're no protector at all. This pisses off the emperor, and so he decides to threaten him with the ultimate legal punishment, which is the 9 family exterminations.
Yes. Corey, did I bring this up to you recently?
I think so. Yeah, because it's in the yes.
So
go ahead.
I can't remember if we keep a list of things to talk about on here, and on my list for so long has been the 9 familial exterminations, and I couldn't remember if I even actually ever brought it up or not. But either way, so I'm excited. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's very exciting. So the 9 familial exterminations is where they round up your entire family, your father, mother, grandfathers, grandmothers, children, grandchildren, uncles, nephews, the whole bit. The women and children
it's our
under a
accent
certain
that he
age.
thinks we don't know the definition of the word family? You think that's what's happening?
I think
here?
he's just illustrating that
No,
it's
I'm kidding.
everybody.
Yeah, right.
Everybody.
Those are the 9 levels that it goes to, both forward and backward. Round them up, sell the women and children into slavery, and all the menfolk get to have their heads cut off while you watch. And then the last level of those 9 exterminations is you. So after watching your entire family be sold into slavery or died, you are then tortured to death as well. Sounds fun. Feng Xiaoru says, "Oh, you think you're so intimidating. You think you're going to get me to write you a nice poem by threatening me. Tell you what, forget about the 9 levels. Why not make it 10? You coward." So the emperor does. And in the history of China, and I think the world, we have the 10 familial exterminations, which was all of the above. But then also the emperor decided to go and find all of the scholars and officials that Feng Xiaoru had ever worked with, and all of the students that he'd ever taught, and have them executed as well. So in all, I think it was about 900 people died as a result of Feng Xiaoru not wanting to write a nice poem. And it gets even better from there. He prepared a very special way to dispatch Feng himself, which was this giant paper cutter, like a human-sized paper cutter.
Boy.
Cut him apart at the waist.
Yeah, boy.
In just one big chop.
Oh, Jesus, with paper?
And that happens in the throne room. And as Feng's top half is bleeding out onto the palace floor, the story goes that he takes his finger and with his dying action dips it in his own pool of blood and writes the word usurper on the floor, just to illustrate that even at the end, he wasn't going to call the emperor anything but exactly what he was.
That's gangster. And that is exactly like the Philadelphia Eagles not going to the White House. It's the same thing.
Well, it's funny to me, like, that dude clearly kept it real for sure.
Yeah, but
I think some of those students and colleagues of his was like, I had this guy for one semester 15 years ago. Right. And then you find out it's like,
thanks a lot, professor.
Just write the fucking poem.
Right. Or don't. You could just not do it.
It's not that big of a deal.
You don't have to add addendums to the
you're right.
fuck you.
That's true.
Like, just don't write the
sure, they're
goddamn
gonna
poem.
kill your whole family, but you didn't have to drag me into it. But him being like, oh, why don't you make it 10, pussy? And
hey, why don't you kill everyone I've ever known? Huh? That'll teach you a lesson, you piece of shit.
Yeah, Emperor said, bet. And then all the people gotta die.
Yeah, what did
reminds me of that bit from the old Chappelle show where it's when keeping it real goes wrong.
Yes, that's exactly what this was.
Absolutely.
It also reminds me of that famous headline, "What's she gonna do? Stab me?" It's like
quote from Man Stabbed. Yes.
Dude, that was amazing to end on.
That was great.
Last words.
We appreciate that, Chris. These are all great. Like I said, I wanted you back in the future to hear some more. But before you go,
tell everybody,
plug your shit, your podcast, whatever, social media, whatever you want people to know about you, where to find you at, and all that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for having me on. Love to be back anytime. You can find my show, The History of China Podcast, by me, Chris Stewart, except no substitutes for that very creative name. You can also find me online, THOC at whatever the blue sky suffix is, don't look for me on Twitter. It's not worth it anymore.
I agree.
In my opinion. But that's basically my social plugs. So yeah.
Okay. Although that is where we found each other, so I am glad for it in that respect.
That is true.
So
that is true. So I rescind that partially.
Yeah, I sent you my number, but I mean it. I want you to come back on anytime you got anything to plug, anytime you are thinking about your China stuff and you're like, oh, that'd be good for putting on airs. Holla at you, boy. So we appreciate you, man. Thank you, and please have a great day.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. All right, y'all, listen up. Make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. Just heat them up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want. I've been a devotee of Factor since I first found out about them. Through doing podcasting, they sent us a sample, but this is 2 years ago or more. And my wife went ahead and signed us up as subscribers the very next day. And I was going to do it myself, but she beat me to it because that's how hard it hit for both of us. The main thing I love about Factor is it's like, you don't have a lot of time during the day, but you still want to eat something that, that hits. You don't want some garbage frozen job from the Save a Lot or whatever. You want something that's like good for you and tastes good, but also that's quick. And that's a hard combination to come by generally, let's be honest. But Factor has cracked the code. That's exactly what they are. And that's exactly why it hits for me. So now you can get outside instead of spending all your time prepping meals and cooking indoors. Factor's meals arrive fresh and ready to eat. So they're perfect for any active lifestyle. They've got over 45 weekly menu options, so you can pick gourmet meals that fit what your goals are. They got Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Factor powers your entire day with satisfying breakfast options, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. They got the whole dadgum menu over there at Factor. They do. It's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. Joe, tell them more.
Man, I'll tell you what, one good thing Factor did is it made me realize that I about near like cauliflower rice as much as I like regular rice, man. Mm-hmm. Like it's really good stuff. And, you can also lose 8 pounds in 8 weeks. I think Trae touched on that a little bit, but like that's a realistic goal and you can do it just with the keto meals. And again, you ain't even got to make them cause that is a hard thing, when you're losing weight, like everybody wants to do the meal prep and all that stuff. And like, that's great. But look, we live in a world that is so fast-paced, and I'm sorry to say that ain't going away anytime soon. Matter of fact, it may even get worse. So it's just a way easier and cost-effective way to do it, and there's no waste. So reach your goals this year with ingredients that you can trust and convenience that cannot be beat. Whether you're wanting to do Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, get that pump like me, bro, or, keto or whatever. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use the code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. You can't beat it. So you might as well eat it. Now I'm saying.
All right, y'all, and we're back. See, that was fun. Told you about that. Fucking getting paper cutted to death. That ain't it.
No, that ain't it.
Also getting turned into like a fucking blind muling toilet torso. That don't hit either. A lot of that stuff don't hit. A lot of history just don't hit. People.
No, we actually have a shirt and a hat and a coffee mug at stayfancymerch.com that suggests the past don't hit.
Somebody was at my show in a meet and greet last weekend wearing a past don't hit shirt, so that was fun.
#1 seller.
Yeah, all right, makes sense. Past it don't hit. Anyway, we appreciate Chris for being here. We're gonna do a couple of y'all's air mails and then get out of your hair for this week, I reckon.
Yeah, this one right here, stop me if you've heard this one before, because I can't remember if I read this last week. I had it starred, but I think we ended up having to rush through. Does the subject line "group sex with the Kentucky headhunters" mean anything to you?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. But my God. Go ahead.
I haven't even read it. I just saw sometimes I just see the headline. I'm like, well, there
sometimes.
You go.
I think everyone who listens to the show knows that that's how you operate. That's why they put more time into the subject lines than the bodies because they know that's how you go. But
Well, sometimes I click them just to be like, is this 19 paragraphs long? And oftentimes there. Heard you talking about Dumas Walker on an episode. My dad was a big KHH fan, and I swear to you, for my entire childhood, I thought they were going to do Miss Walker. I seriously thought they were going to get a burger and some cheap whiskey and then just wear Miss Walker out like cheap sneakers. Anyway, love you in the show. Cody Backus.
Okay, well, that's good. Backus.
I know, that's a great name, ain't it?
Yeah, is that a username or an alias? Because that's almost too perfect right there. Backus, with that debauchery you just described. I will say, I thought from the subject line, group sex with, I thought you were going to tell us that yo mama sucked every Kentucky headhunter's dick or whatever back in the 80s or something. I thought that's where.
Well, I thought that too, which is why I clicked that quick as fuck.
But it is funny. Let's all go down to do Miss Walker. It's funny, yeah. So anyway, if y'all don't, that was on a Bubba Shot episode,
podcast.
Right? So that was on a different podcast. But the Kentucky Headhunters were a country band. Dumas Walker was their hit, but they're from around the same neck of the woods where I grew up. Dumas Walker's was in my hometown when it existed, so they're kind of like local boys. So that's
kind of crazy that place ever closed down. Like, you'd think that song would keep them afloat.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know when that song obviously was a known hit in my childhood.
Already closed.
Okay, so yeah, that song came out in 1989. So I don't even remember what. So when that song came out, it might have still been open. By the time I have a living memory of this song, so let's say 93, 94, when I'm 7, 8 years old, the actual place, Dumas Walker's, was already closed down.
Yeah, you just think it would have held up. Anyways, subject line, K-pop brain aneurysm. Hey, Corey and Trae, I got a story related to strokes and shit rewiring your brain. My girlfriend's aunt had a brain aneurysm several years ago. Among taking away her social filter and just becoming more irritable, there was one very peculiar and quite notable change. It made her, a white woman in her 70s from Southern Illinois, an unabashed K-pop stan. And when I say stan, I mean every family gathering I've been with her at has involved her blasting K-pop on a Bluetooth speaker whenever she gets moments to herself, because she still has the wherewithal to know that not everyone's into all that, including me, to be honest. So it was funny to hear about your friend that had a stroke and became a math whiz, because I was like, hey, I heard something like that. Maybe not as crazy, though. Too long didn't read. My girlfriend's aunt's brain bleed told her to love K-pop. Well, that's hilarious, because I've often thought, in order to be into that shit, you'd about have to have a fucking brain aneurysm.
That hits. That's funny. I'll tell you this. This happened to me with so many things ever since I got the damn thing, but I took a K-pop ride on my Peloton.
It hit.
And I came out the other side of it with a greater appreciation for it. Now, look, I don't still ever really listen to it outside of that, but it kind of did it for me in that context, in that moment. It was the only thing that made me sort of understand. I was like, I can see how this shit sure is catchy. So
if I ever catch you jerking off to a squid pussy, then I'll know you've gone too far.
I ain't gonna do all that. But I looked up the Dumas Walker's wiki, and the guys at Kentucky Headhunters says I knew Dumas Walker obviously was a person and the place is named for him, but I've talked before about how where I'm from, we're real big into marbles. We got our home of multiple marbles champions. So it says, I don't even think I knew this part. The song refers to a retailer and legendary world-class marbles champion named Dumas Walker from Moss, Tennessee, which is where my daddy's from. Moss is outside of Salina, who owned a package shop near the Kentucky-Tennessee state line. So the package shop, dude, no way. My drunk ass stepdad, it had to be a different one. My drunk ass stepdad used to work at a package store right on the state line, and I'd go out there with him and I'd sell beer to rednecks when I was 8 years old or whatever. Yeah, because he'd be fucking drunk in the back, and I'm like an 8-year-old working the register and pulling out beers from the beer cave and all that shit. But it had to just be a completely different one. I started wondering, I was like, did it close down and somebody reopened it? Because you would just reuse the name Dumas Walker's, wouldn't you?
Of course.
Yeah, I don't know. It is weird. I need to talk to Uncle Tim or somebody.
Are marbles still big there?
I mean, they were pretty big when I was a kid. I've mentioned before recently on one of our podcasts, when I was a kid, there was a Salina girl who was like the LeBron James with marbles, and she was in Sports Illustrated for kids and shit. So that's when I was in school there. So it was like, I mean, yeah, it was still a thing. I met a friend of Drew's from law school or something who his dad and him randomly, they grew up playing marbles. And when I told him I'm from Salina, he was like, "Oh shit, I play marbles. Y'all are fucking." He was like, "Y'all are taking seriously down." Like he had actually, no one's ever heard of Salina, but this guy who was from elsewhere but played marbles was like, "Damn, you're from Salina?" Again, it's like the Canton, Ohio of fucking marbles, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. But, you know, me and my buddies never really fucked. We all did play it a little, but we didn't really fuck.
I was just thinking about like a really sad essay to be written on all the factories being closed and it being titled "The Day Salina Lost Its Marbles."
Lost its marbles. I mean, yeah. I mean, it is kind of true because I've said before, it's like when all that shit went down, everything went to shit. And like the football team used to be good, and then they started not hitting. And it's like, it was everything. And it did, right. I think that did kind of happen to marbles too. It also just kind of died off. People was too busy, you know, being on pills and shit to do marbles anymore. But anyway, I don't know.
Last one. Subject line. All right, this is my last time suggesting this for Trae, maybe, which subtext here, I assume, means I've gotten several emails that I've just looked over.
No, you've probably read it, and I've probably said, yeah, I'll talk about that. Then I just don't. That's what I'm expecting to have happened.
Hey, fellas, this email may be too boring to read on the show. We'll be the judge of that. But I still think it's a fantastic story for Trae to tell when he wants to talk about someone with a dark sense of humor that's as big as his multi-million-dollar bank account. It's also its own Venn diagram, maybe. I've sent it over to you once or twice before, and I'm convinced I haven't heard you tell the story because you didn't see it, because there is no way it's not good enough for the show. It's got a Canadian puck-like figure, women of ill repute, and a baby-making derby worth $7 million in today's money. Basically, in 1920-something, every line in a dude's will was a troll. He gave his shares of a brewery to anti-alcohol preachers and his stake in some sort of gambling operation to some stick-asses against gambling. He also gave his vacation home in Jamaica to 3 men who he knew abhorred each other. But what he did with his cash, $7 million in today's money, was a legend that turned infamous. He left his fortune to the Toronto woman who had the most kids in the 10 years after he died. Since no one really knew about this contest until 5 years after it started, the top 3 contenders were women who lived in the slums, were Catholic, and had spaghetti and potato people names. And at least one was unmarried and had kids from, gasp, 2 different dads. Spoiler alert, she couldn't afford to divorce the dude who walked out on her and their 1,100 kids. Something the waspy leadership in the city would not let stand. In the end, the poor women didn't get a dime of the dude's money, though a lawsuit against the government garnered a couple of them a modern-day 6-figure payout, and the millions went to non-Catholics who didn't need the money as much, and who gave birth to fewer kids than the ladies who originally led the race. This American Life just reran the episode from which I first heard this story. It starts around the 20-minute mark, and she shared the link here. Wishing you both the very best. Well, I mean, that story does hit. I think we've just told it.
That's what I was about to say. It's like, you gave it to Joe to read, and then he read it. So I don't know what we're supposed to do with it now. yeah. Right, there you go.
But I am glad you did, because that's a super hitting piece of airmail. Mm-hmm. Like that's really insane and awesome. But thank you. You can send us your own airmail at puttingonaires@gmail.com. Also go to stayfancymerch.com and get some shirts. Trae, tell everybody where you're going to be, buddy.
Tonight, if you listen to this the day it comes out, me and Drew will be in Knoxville together. And tomorrow, Saturday, April 12th, me and Cho will be in Chattanooga together. Those shows are both sold out, so I hope you got your tickets already, but come see us if you do. And if you're in Oregon, I'll be there next week, and then Houston at the end of the month. And then after that, Seattle, Vegas, San Diego, a bunch of places. Go to TraeCrowder.com, check them out, come see me, and make it hit. Also watch Trash Daddy, which is on Trae Crowder. There's a link to it on TraeCrowder.com too.
Yes, absolutely do that. WeLoveCorey.com is where all my bonus stuff is. And also, since Trae is going to be with me this weekend, I'm going to convince him or make him against his will live stream some of the Masters coverage with me between our recordings. And I will be doing that throughout the Masters, definitely most of the day Sunday, and I will be streaming until there is a green jacket awarded, and that'll be streaming on all of my platforms. But if you don't follow me on YouTube, go ahead and head to my YouTube page. That way you'll get the notification and all that stuff. And also, I just wrote a thing for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's out in print. It's also on their website, so go to ajc.com. It's about being a man, which I'm more than qualified to write about. Yeah, there you go. Stay fancy, motherfuckers.
Skew. Here's Lydia Lovelace.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Royalty and rednecks are alike. They both like cutting and picking fights. Biscuits and baked beans where they don't belong. Sit on down with Corey and Trae and learn some fancy shit today. We'll laugh a little even when they're wrong. They'll take you to a magical place where if you call someone a cunt, nobody cares. They keep it debonair at putting on airs, putting on airs, putting on airs, putting on